The total number of new HIV infections in U.S. women in 2009, 57% occurred in blacks, 21% were in whites, and 16% were in Hispanic/Latinas. We wanted to come together as women and discuss these factors and what we can do to overcome them. To start us off on the discussion today, we will be hearing from Ms. Sarah Patterson, who is a sexuality educator. She conducts sexual health workshops for people in the sex trade through the Sex Workers Outreach Project. She also works with healthcare providers to improve their cultural competency. When Carrie has also worked in the ER as a trauma nurse at Jersey City Medical Center. Ms. Raven Ware, who is right here, is the host of the of the YouTube show Ravenova. It's spelled Ravenovah. And Ms. Julissa Vasquez is the manager of the Community Health and Research Department here at GMHC and works with the agency's initiatives targeting both youth and women. In her current role, she has the opportunity to influence social norms on a larger scale, but she has also worked in direct client services, providing mental health counseling and case management services to high-risk populations.
Since this panel is about women in particular, I think it has a lot to do with empowering young women to feel as though they have the right to ask for safer sex, and really meaning that and having the educators that are saying that mean that, right? Because I think it's important to remember that sexuality education in schools has, up until this point, not been super valued in New York City, right? We're only now recently getting a New York City state mandate for sex education. And then a lot of folks who were doing sex education up until that point may or may not have felt that it was important to emphasize things like that, may or may not have felt that young girls feeling empowered around things like that were something that they should focus on. So I think that for me, that's really where it starts, is having all women feel as though they have a right to ask for safer sex, and that that's a part of their health in general, not just their sexual health, but their health and wellness over a lifespan, and that that's all connected.
Thank you. Can I ask you another question? I'm so sorry. If you were a sex worker and you were engaged to have unprotected sex with a client for a larger donation, like, what would you do, and like, why? If you want to answer that.
Okay. I think that that's something that does come up for folks sometimes. For the folks that I work with, it's more of a concern of having good negotiation skills. So actually, it's kind of similar to the way I answered the question before. It's like, we really need to know how to negotiate safer sex in a way that's sexy, that works. And I think particularly for sex workers, that's something that's really important, is like, knowing that they can't work if they get HIV, or if they do get HIV, it's going to be a lot harder to work. And that if that's your livelihood, and that's something worth protecting. So I think it really does go back to kind of what I was saying about women and feeling like your body is something that's really valuable and worth protecting. And so I think they are connected there as well.
Does anyone have anything to say about that?
I'm not in sex work, so I feel a little weird talking about it. But it seems like, again, there's the issue of value. How do we value that no amount of money should be worth us risking our lives? So how do we really begin to value ourselves and feel that our health is worth it? And so I think it is a self-esteem thing, even when someone is offering you money, that we shouldn't be willing, even if we're in the sex industry, folks in the sex industry shouldn't be willing, and I know folks in the sex industry who are not willing to have unsafe sex for at a certain amount of money. So just because you're a sex worker doesn't mean that you shouldn't have self-esteem.
Because that stuff plays out in non-sex work scenarios too that are transactional, right? Like, I think sometimes there's this emphasis on creating intimacy by having unsafe sex, or showing someone some form of love or affection by having unsafe sex with that person, right? And that, like, that means something, right? And I feel like we really need to flip the script around stuff like that, where it's like, in actuality, like, what it really means is that people are in danger and at risk, and that they're not being respectful of one another, right? So it's like, I feel like that's a conversation that these are two similar things, right? Where it's like it is about value, and it's ultimately about like showing respect for everyone in this situation.
Raven, you look like you had something to say.
Well,
You want to pass it?
hello everyone. I feel like this: if someone is trying to offer you to have sex with them, and they want to pay a little bit more, then evidently they're trying to give you something. So you should have to question why do they want to have sex with you for a large amount of money, and how much of your life is worth it, and also, are you worth living with this person disease for the rest of their life? Because the simple fact of the matter is, once they walk out the door, they're now living with you. So that's the way I feel about it. No, everyone should always protect themselves, and that's a giving, because well, you really don't trust a lot of things people say. As far as me, I'm gonna speak for myself. Even if you do and you have sex with people, and I feel like this, even if you and your partner go out, you have safe sex and y'all decide y'all don't want to use a condom, me per se, I wouldn't still make you use the condom, because if you go out and you cheat, you would have to have sex with me anyway, because of the simple fact of the matter, I would know you cheated on me. So you have to have sex with me and then give me whatever you was doing out there in the streets. You have to give it to me, because simple fact of the matter, if I find this information out, I'm going to have a fit. So reality is that it's not really worth it, even though it's a little bit off the topic of what we were heading.
Yeah.
But in reference to the donation, in reference to that, I would just say protect your body. And if someone wants to have sex with you for a large amount of money, then they're trying to give you something. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to ask, what is a common misconception in our community or in our population's sexuality, do you believe? That's to any of the panelists. A common misconception about you or your community
Well, the
population's sexuality.
I'm sorry. The common misconception, I believe, that when someone decides they're a transgender and they become the new age woman or the Wonder Woman, that everybody always believes that you've done it because you want to have more sex, and the reason why you enhance your body because you want to lure the man and more, or the woman, and more to have sex with them. And it's not really that reality. The reality is that you're trying to be passable, and you're trying to fulfill this certain image in your head to present out to the world and present it to yourself. So you walk past that window when you're walking down the street, you could say, okay, this is the way I want it to look. But for some reason, a lot of people believe that the reason why transsexuals become the way that they are is because they want to have sex, and we do not want to work. We want to have sex, and we want to charge a certain amount of money, and we're lazy. And it's a misconception, and it's not true.